Right, hi, am I live? I am. I must say, all this technology, I find it a little overwhelming sometimes. So many things to learn. Right, good morning, everybody. I am coming to you live from my fabulous office, which is actually part of my lounge. And we are going to be talking about costings today. So this is part 2 of our costing series. We will be doing it this week and next week. Again, I will tell you what we're going to do next week. It really depends how far we get today. But if you are watching this later, so I'm filming these live during lockdown. Today is the 29th of April, but I know lots of people are battling with their data, or if you're like me, perhaps battling with your just the whole generalized lockdown situation. I will leave the videos up for you to refer to them later, so you can have a look and come back to them when you want to see, when you have time and energy for actually doing your costings. Okay, so I hope everybody's well. I'm going to dive right in because I have some steep competition today. This morning, I think at the same time as this video, the Department of Education is going to be announcing the plan for getting our children back into school. So I would like, it does seem very bouncy. Is there something wrong with this thing? Okay, so I would like to dive right in because there's no way anything I have to say is going to compare with us finding out how on earth we're getting our children back to school. Right, so last week we left on an absolute cliffhanger of the fact, here we go, I've made a little diagram. The fact that one cupcake is only costing us R1.41 to make. I think it was R1.41, R1.81, or whatever it was. We'll just use this for now because that's what I've written here. So hi everybody. I see we're getting some people joining. So I just want to kind of faff around a few more seconds just to get everyone who wants to be on board on. But that cliffhanger that we left it on, I think left everyone thinking, gosh, am I overcharging? But don't worry, today we are going to get to the bottom of what we actually should be charging. Okay. Right, so to start off with, that was just the cost for the cupcake, the actual cake part, this part here. We haven't factored in the icing, and we haven't factored in the decorations, and we haven't factored in any of our other costs, like electricity and all of that. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is how much, we're just using the case of this cupcake for now, but how much the cost of the icing is. Okay, so I found this fabulous recipe typed up by one of my aunties in a file from my mom some years ago. And I mean, it's always been in the file, that recipe. So it's at least 40 years that it's been there. And it writes there, I think it was a pastry recipe. It's like, well, you need this much marge. And then in brackets, it said, or butter if you're in that league. So obviously, even 40 years ago, there was a big discrepancy between the cost of margarine and butter. I usually use butter for my cupcakes and things that I sell, but there is a big cost discrepancy. So let's get down to it. Okay. So the recipe that I use for butter icing, and this could obviously vary depending on the type of icing you're using, but just let's use this as an example. I would use 500 grams of butter and 1 kilogram of icing sugar. So the total cost for a batch of icing using that idea, so it would be 85 Rand. Okay, so that's 85 Rand with the butter. And I would add in a bit of icing, a bit of vanilla essence and that sort of thing as well. Hi, Lisbeth, can you tell me, since you're there and I can see you, is there a solid stream? Are you getting, is it jumping? I feel like from my side it's all bouncing and cutting in and out. Is that what it looks like to you? I wonder if I should cut off and restart. Anyway, okay. With the marge, the cost is $29.99 plus 25. So I'm going to use my trusty calculator. Okay, so the cost for a margarine icing would be about 55 Rand. Okay. So you can see straight away that that's quite a big discrepancy between the two costs. And I used the cost for Stork Bake because that's what I use when I use margarine. But there are cheaper margarines. There are sometimes you can get them in special for like 10 Rand for 500 grams. So this 55 Rand could be even cheaper depending on what you've used. Okay. So as you can see, that is oh, it looks perfectly fine. Oh, good. I think it's just my screen, maybe. I don't know. I'm jumping up and down here. Right. Okay. So that is basically there's already a major difference in how much icing the cost of the icing depending on the ingredients you use. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Put my little file down. My thing. So when I make cupcakes for my children, I take my cupcake and I smear a thin little layer of icing on the top because I don't want my children hopped up on sugar. But when I'm doing it for some, a paying customer, I'll pipe it on. It's a considerably more icing. And there's a big difference between the amount of icing being used on one that I've spread with, I've put like 3 sprinkles. My poor children, they don't think very highly of my baking either. If you ask them, they say, no, we'd much rather have a cupcake from Woolies because obviously then they get a good amount of icing. But when you're doing it for an order, you probably will be piping it. It's much more icing. So it's very difficult to know for sure how much icing you're going to use on a batch of cupcakes. Hi, Penny. So you need to kind of gauge that depending on how you pipe, how big the cupcakes are. Sometimes I just pipe a small little bit and it's mostly cake with a little bit. It depends on what the look they're going for is. But I would say when it comes to the costings, just use your highest quantity. So assume you will use the whole batch, let's say, to decorate those cakes. Okay. So if one batch is being divided by, I think we had 24 cupcakes last time. So for the butter icing, sorry, let me just work it out. That will work out at R3.54 per cupcake. R3.54 per cupcake. And for the margarine one, we've got 55 divided by 24, R2.30 per cupcake. Okay, so you can already straight away see that even the cheapest one is almost twice as much as just the cake. Okay, so a lot of times the biggest cost is in the icing, and we'll get to the decorations as well. That's even worse. So you need to factor that in. But let's say we're not in that league. Let's say we're a firmly margarine league today. So the cost per cupcake will be R1.40. See, these pens, they don't have to be upright. R1.40 plus R2.30. Okay, that's equals R3.71. Is that right? Can you tell I've been doing homeschooling? I can do maths in my head now. I know, amazing. Anyway, so there's my number sum for that. Okay, so now it's looking still looking kind of on the low side, but let's say we got R3.71 for our cupcake. So far it doesn't have any decorations, it doesn't have a box to be in, and it doesn't have a customer to go to yet. So those things are all part of your overheads, which I say I will delve more into. But when you are in a restaurant situation, they will tell you that you need to take the cost of your ingredients and times it by 3 to get your selling price. The thinking is, see, I'll draw a graph for you. See, gosh, I'm full of things today. And I've got fun facts today as well. We'll do a fun fact now. Okay, so 1/3 of your total, there's our total, 1/3 of your total is your food cost. So the cost of, oh, no, maybe I've got a better pen. Oh, pink. Cost of ingredients. Charlotte has kindly lent me all her pens. Cost of ingredients. 1/3 is overheads. We'll talk more now, but basically overheads, oops, didn't fit in. Overheads would be the electricity, phone, data, petrol, everything that you need to make your business go. And then your last third here is your labor. Or if you work alone in your business, you will think of this as your profit. Okay. Okay, so that means for your R3.71 cupcake, you will be selling it for, wait, hang on, 371 times by 3. Let's see, I need a good bright color to write this with. What have we got here? Turquoise. Let's see if hopefully it works. I'm feeling all fancy. So you should be selling this margarine cupcake with no decorations on it for R11.13. Okay, I still feel that that's on the cheap side. I know I'm expensive. I know that I charge a lot. There's a few reasons for that, but I will get to those in a minute. But this for me is the basic cost of a cupcake, or basic selling price for a cupcake. Okay, this theoretically should have included the overheads and should have included your time and energy to make it. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, fun fact. Let's do a fun fact. I feel like we need something to brighten up the zoo here. Right, the first fun fact for today. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. There you go. So the unicorn, although it might seem an odd choice, Visit Scotland explains that unicorns played an integral role in the country's history back in the 12th century. William, I used the proud beast in the Scottish royal coat of arms. So there you go. Unicorn cakes for the Scottish. Okay, let's go back to our fairly boring stuff here. Okay, so if I worked out the same thing for the butter cupcake, let's just do it as an exercise to see the difference. So I'm just going to quickly calculate here. So 1 rand 41 plus 3 rand 54 for the butter icing, times that by 3. So for a butter cupcake, according to these calculations, the selling price would be 14 rand and 85 cents. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Okay. So you can see straight away that there's a big discrepancy. That's the difference between selling a 12 rand cupcake and a 15 rand cupcake, basically. Or an 11 rand cupcake and a 15 rand cupcake, depending on how you round it off. So I hear these stories all the time. Lisa's got a question. I'll answer your question now. I hear these stories all the time where people are selling a cupcake for 5 rand. And yes, they are probably covering their costs, but they can't possibly be making any profit from that. And it makes me kind of sad when I hear these stories, because it means that other people come and they say, how can you sell a cupcake for 25 rand? Which I do, and I'll tell you how, when there's somebody else is selling it for 5 rand. So yes, I think sometimes you do need to educate your audience on what you're doing. Okay, right, let's read Lisa's question. Even working on my own, I count labor as a salary to myself and would like a profit after that as well, so I can buy new cutters, etc. So I would say that new cutters and other equipment should fall into overheads. But yes, I agree. So if you think about a bakery, for instance, the bakery will be having their cost price, their overheads, the staff that work in the bakery, and then the bakery owner would presumably also want to make a profit. So I'm not sure you could sell it for 4 times, but the way to do that is to cut down on your ingredient costs and cut down on your overheads as much as possible to maximize what your labor profit is. I think that's really the thinking behind it. Okay, but let's get to the decorations, because all of this is hunky-dory if you're making a cupcake with no decorations on it. But the minute you start adding decor onto it, especially something that you've made yourself, this does no longer work, because the time it takes to make a fondant decoration, the cost of ingredients is very small, a couple of cents maybe to make a flower, but the time is great. So for that, and for any specialized decorating, I feel like you need to add on an additional cost for that time that it takes. So if we went back to the restaurant example, if it was a butternut soup, doesn't really have any specialized skills. You make your soup, you blend it, you serve it, end of the story. But with a wedding cake or a decorated cookie or something like that, there is a great deal of skill and time that is going into it. And people, as I say, when people come with difficult questions about why we cost as much as we do, I think you just have to calmly explain, this is a way, this is it's a handmade product. Each one is individually piped or rolled or made by hand or whatever it is. So that's why it costs more. If they want a cheaper product, you need to think of cheaper ways to offer them that. So an example with cookies, I know Lisbeth does a lot of cookies, is to do something which is stenciled, for instance. So instead of piping it by hand, everyone that says happy birthday, you use a stencil, you spray it or you smear it over or whatever, and churn them out in more like a assembly line. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Okay, right, do we need another fun fact? Here we go. bees sometimes sting other bees. Well, there you go. A rogue bee from another hive might try and steal the nectar, and the guard bee will sting and bite the intruder. There we go. Don't mess with those bees. Okay, right, let's get down to decorations, because this is actually what we really need to know. Okay, so we're selling our cupcake with no decorations for anything between 12 and 15 Rand. Okay, but this is just a piped cupcake. It's got no sprinkles. It's got no nothing on it. Okay. Right, keep those at the bottom. We get rid of the rest. Okay, so let's say you're just putting sprinkles on it. I suppose technically the sprinkles would count in the overheads, but that kind of thing is quite expensive. So I just looked up, whoopsie, sorry, let's get that in the screen. I just looked up these prices earlier. Hundreds and thousands at Cab Foods are 10 Rand for 30 grams, that's a 3. And the gold dragées are 30 Rand for a 40 gram. So that's that small little plastic container that you can buy at the baking shops. Okay. And that doesn't go far. That will maybe do one batch of cupcakes, I would say, depending on who's applying them and how many you're applying. So although that is a very simple decoration, that would count probably in overheads. But let's say you were going to hand make a topper for each one, maybe a small flower. Okay. So I don't know exactly the cost, but let's say it's 5 cents to nothing. Times it by 3. You can times it by anything. It's not enough. It's not going to account for the time to make those decorations. So if I was doing it, if I had to work out a quote, oh sorry, I'm having some trouble, I would say, okay, for my 15 Rand cupcake, each one is going to have 2 flowers. If I went down to Cab Foods and I bought flowers that were similar, let's say that each flower was 2 Rand each. We know we're putting 3 flowers on each cupcake. So that's my 15 Rand cupcake plus, oh, now this one doesn't work, plus 6 Rand for the 3 flowers. And I would sell that for 21 Rand, okay? Okay, so that's how you get to a 21 Rand cupcake. And that's just a cupcake with 3 flowers. So it's nothing really that fancy. I'm talking little blossoms or something like that. Okay, obviously, if you make the flower yourself, because the cost of ingredients is low, you can make profit there by making it yourself. So that's why the profit and the time become kind of one mixed bag, or labor, profit, labor, time, all becomes one kind of mixed bag in that third. So what I would do if I had all the time in the world, I would, if I had leftover of pink fondant, oh, sorry, we seem to have lost, I don't know if you guys can still see me. I'm going to just end it and restart. Sorry, we seem to have some kind of weird. Hi, hello, hello. Okay, we've got the live button, hooray. I'm sure I've lost you all. I don't know what's going on with this thing. Hopefully this has reconnected us. I will, anyway, if this is part 2, I will put them together. Well, there's some eyes. Okay, we've got some eyes. Hi, eyes. I will splice these 2 videos together, join them together, and put them on YouTube. So if you're battling or if you've lost the plot here, and I'll put the links down in all of these videos. Sorry about that. Hi, Elsa. Some new faces. Okay, so just to catch those of you up that might have, I have you back. Yay, I have you back. I don't know what's happening here. I think maybe I should not be in charge of the tech. But anyway, okay. I'm glad to be back. As I say, I will make sure that these are joined together so that there is some continuity if you want to watch it later, and I'll put it on my YouTube channel. Here comes a child. What'd you say, Rob? Oh, okay. Can you go and ask Daddy to help you? I'm not sure if you all heard that. I should probably edit that out. Okay. All right. So where we were earlier, sorry, just to catch you up if you're just joining us now, we've been talking about how to work out the sale price of an item. we've been working on cupcakes, and we came up with the idea that to sell our cupcake would, let's say it had butter icing, would be about 15 Rand plus the cost of decorations. So all I was saying is that if you create your own decorations, so you yourself are making the flowers, it's difficult to work out what a good price is for that, because it's just your time. There's no longer the guideline of the rest of the ingredient cost. So I would go down to your local baking shop and see what they are selling their things for, and act as if you were going to sell it for the same price. So if you were to make, the example was 3 little blossoms and the baking shop is selling them for 2 Rand each, you would sell them for 2 Rand each, making your decoration price 6 Rand, which gets you to a cupcake selling price of 21 Rand. So I get, as I said before, these people coming to me, they say, can you sell a cupcake for 25 Rand? Well, that is sort of how we're getting there. And that's still pretty basic. It's not even a highly decorated cupcake. Okay. And the fact is that really the difficulty is not working out what to sell it for. The difficulty is explaining to people why we're charging that much for a cupcake. A few days ago on my Facebook page, I posted it was a thing about restaurants and how their margin of profit margin is very narrow, and this lockdown is causing a lot of restaurants to go out of business. So that's actually what I really wanted to talk about now. I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but I feel like this is maybe more important. So this is a very difficult time for everybody. Every business. I heard that hair salons are only going to be allowed to open in stage 1. I don't know. I'm so glad I let these grays grow out. Totally low maintenance. But I think we will be back in business before that. And most of the people that I teach are home bakers like myself. So your overheads are pretty low. You don't need to pay rent to an expensive, landlord or that sort of thing. You can almost put your business into hibernation. Obviously, you've got no profit, but as long as your overhead costs are quite low, it means that if you don't work, you're not losing money. Okay. So I think next week we'll talk about all of that kind of stuff at length, paying insurance, and we'll do some homework about UIF and all of that to see exactly what you have to do if you want to apply for those business help things that are available. But let's just go back. So in our 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 business, okay, that's how you get to your basic selling price. Then over and above that, you add for specialized decorations. And that's why a wedding cake is not just 3 layers of carrot cake that you could buy from the spa with a cup of blommy stuck on it. It's really not. It's a high-level, high-end product that is handmade, that is done by someone who knows what they're doing. You can't just bang a bunch of cakes on top of each other and hope it's going to stand. It doesn't work like that, okay? So people just need to understand that, okay? But let's go to the overheads, because I think that is the place where you will be able to make economies to maximize your profit. Okay, so overheads, I'm not sure I'm going to actually write them down. Let me just talk. So overheads are things like electricity, which is very expensive. That's probably going to be one of your biggest costs. Things like rent, insurance, phone, data for your phone calls, telephone lines, spray and cook, boards, boxes, all of that stuff. Basically non-edible things that you have to buy for your business are overheads. So it's just a guesstimate to say that those overheads are 1/3 or at the same cost as your ingredient cost, but you need to keep an eye on that. So some businesses, some restaurants and things will actually weigh the waste that's in the bins to see if there's a lot of food waste, because that would obviously eat into that profit as well. So you need to look at those things and say, well, where can I economize? Or have I accounted for it? So in the case of our cupcakes, I would say you are never going to send cupcakes or a cake or any order without some kind of board in a box. So let's say the person has decided to order 1 cupcake. Still needs to go in a box. Okay, so their 21 Rand cupcake is now, I don't know, let's say the box is 2 Rand. It's now 23 Rand, okay? and it is actually, please just don't sell one cupcake at a time, unless you're running something like a bakery where you've got a stream of cupcakes being made, which are being sold all day long. For a home baker, I would suggest that you have a minimum for the number of cupcakes that you're going to sell. So for instance, if the minimum is 24, that's what you can fit into your box. You only need one box, so the cost per cupcake is less, if that makes sense. So if you have a box that holds 24 cupcakes or one cupcake, that is going to be divided by each cupcake. That's why it is an overhead and not a cost here. But I would say for boards and boxes, because they are quite expensive, I would add that over and above. So I would add it to my total. Technically, it is an overhead, but let's use an example of a novelty cake. So you're making, I don't know, a pirate map of the world. The cake itself is quite small, but it's on a huge big board so that you can put your map on the board. Those big boards can be as much as like 50 Rand. So even if you're only selling, if you're selling the cake for 500, that is already 10% of the total. So I would, even if you don't mark that up, even if you don't times it by anything, I would just add the cost of that board and the box over and above. Technically, I feel that you should mark it up because you still have to go to the shop and get it. If you buy it in bulk, you have to store it somewhere. You know, there's the chance that your children will shred it while you're doing a live video. Who knows? Anything could happen. So the key here is to maybe mark it up not 3 times because that would be prohibitive. So let's say that box is 2 Rand. You can't add on 6 Rand for a box, unfortunately, for one cupcake. You could do that maybe for 24 cupcakes though. So I would times that by 2 and add it on over and above. And I would use that principle. I've actually made notes here. Boards, boxes, and flowers, fresh flowers. I would use that little timesing by 2 ratio. So I would say take your ingredients times by 3 plus, oh, found a pen, all these pens broken, plus box, oh no, that's not, maybe purple twice. Box, no, really going through all of them here. Oh, no, maybe it's that angle. Let's see what have we got here. Oh, there we go. Box times by 2, and boards and flowers and whatever packaging, and then total, and then plus decorations, which you will work out depending on either by comparing yourself to what other people are selling, or the other alternative is to use a per hour cost. So if you're going to make handmade roses, so I'm just putting all the lids back on the pen so that they will hopefully come back to life when I need them just now. Let's say you're making handmade roses and you know it's going to take you 3 hours to make the flowers for a cake. Let's say it's a wedding cake. I would say charge 50 Rand an hour or 100 Rand an hour or whatever you think is fair compensation for your time. And don't sell yourself short. It's very important to value what you have made. It is, as I say, a handmade product. Not everybody can sit down and make beautiful flowers out of sugar or pipe cookies or whatever it is. And unless you are telling them a price that you feel compensates your skill and your talent, they're not going to say, oh, no, that's too cheap. Let me pay twice that. Come on. No one's going to say that. So I think we need to get out of this funk of charging less than we're worth in the hopes of perhaps getting business. I think that's why we do it, or maybe not valuing ourselves enough, and work on charging an appropriate price that allows us to make a living out of what we do. Okay. I feel a bit distracted today, and being interrupted means this is a bit muddled up. But as I say, I will edit it together. For those of you that are looking for some a support group, we have a little WhatsApp group of bakers, professional bakers, that you can join. Anyone can join it. There's quite a lot of discussion about how to charge, lots of people sharing their work or looking for ideas or asking for help. It's quite a nice resource. It is quite a busy group, so I would suggest if you do join that you mute it. Next week, on Monday morning at 10, I will be making a no-churn ice cream. I think we're going to do honeycomb flavor. So I'll show you how to make honeycomb and then how to use it in a no-churn ice cream that even kids can make. It's a nice, easy recipe. And on Wednesday next week, I will be going deep diving again into all of this costing stuff. And we'll talk more about small businesses and how small businesses can survive this situation. Actually, I was thinking earlier that we need some homework. So if you're still with me, here's your homework. I am suggesting that if everyone, you don't even have to share it with me, but just spend the next week thinking about how you can change your business ideas to suit this new crazy COVID world we live in. So if you are I don't think we're going to be doing big scale 200 people wedding cakes anytime soon, because no one's going to be having large weddings. What can your business do? And maybe think of 3 ideas that could be something that we can offer to someone in these difficult times. So for instance, let's say people will still get married. Excuse me. It's the COVID, maybe. No, I don't think so. It's not catching on the screen, so we're good. So for instance, let's say you do wedding cakes. Now you're not going to be offering large weddings. People aren't going to be, maybe they're putting them on hold, or maybe they're going to get married, but they're going to have smaller weddings. What could your business do that could offer something to those customers? So we have to be creative. We have to roll with the punches, find ways to change what we do, that we can still have a business and still be creating cakes. So maybe instead of doing wedding cakes, you could offer mini wedding cakes for small weddings, and start also producing rusks or whatever it is. Just give it some thought in your own personal context. So for me, for instance, I don't know when I will be able to offer classes where we can come in real life and sit together. I suppose it depends how many people are in a class, but I'm hoping to go more towards doing online classes, because I think that is a great way to reach more people. I've wanted to do it for ages anyway. I just need to work out some of the kinks, which thank you to all of you that are watching. It's great to be able to test out these streaming things and see how it could work. So any feedback you have would be great, specifically on my teaching style, but be nice. Come on, be nice. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to just say, so before the lockdown, I had a kind of a Wednesday Facebook social media post about buying, selling, and trading your secondhand equipment. So I know a lot of people are doing cleaning out of their houses in this time. So if you are cleaning out your equipment boxes and finding things that you don't use or don't want or want to get rid of, put those aside, take a photo of them, think of a price, maybe, because it depends on what the equipment is. It's maybe easier to group like 10 things together and say all of this for 200 or whatever, and get those things ready. As soon as we are able to visit with one another, I will be doing those again. So you can post your stuff. Right, shall we end off with a fun fact? Let's see what have we got here. Oh, here's one. E is the most common letter and appears in 11% of English words. Try writing out a few sentences. Anything at all. Now take a minute to look at how frequently each letter in the alphabet appears. Chances are we'll see a lot of the letter E. There you go. So, thank you for watching. I am sorry about the interruption in the middle. It did put me a bit off my game. I will put in the comments all of these, the WhatsApp group link and all of that stuff. As soon as I have a moment, I just need to go and throw some chocolate biscuits in the direction of my children. Next week, Wednesday, we will be doing more of the same and hopefully getting to the bottom of how to do it with more, confidence, and speak more about, valuing yourself. I actually think that's really what it comes down to. Have a fabulous day. Bye. Can I switch this thing off? Here we go again.